Welcome to Wintuition. I'm CJ, and today I'm going to be joined by Wyatt, and we're going to be ranking removal in cEDH to find out which is the best and which is the worst. But before we get into the episode, I do want to mention that we're going to be at SCGCon Philly from March 8th through the 10th playing cEDH all weekend long. So if you're going to be there, feel free to swing by, and we'd love to jam some cEDH with you. And if you happen to like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your playgroup. We really do appreciate the support because we want to continue making awesome cEDH content for you and the masses. But without further ado, let's get into the ranking video.
We're going to start with the worst color in cEDH, which is green. First card is Pick Your Poison. So Pick Your Poison, decent card. It is sorcery speed. It does have the modular effect where you can choose one, but it doesn't necessarily get rid of what you need. So I personally would give it a C.
I'd agree with a C, because oftentimes they're going to have multiple things to sack, so you aren't going to be able to guarantee what you want to go away.
Okay, give it a C. Moving on, next one.
We have Nature's Claim up next. It's a 1-mana green instant, and it says you can destroy target artifact or enchantment. Its controller gains 4 life. Now this card's really good because it is 1 mana and it's instant speed, so there are going to be a lot of times where you can blow somebody out on their turn and it's going to be efficient to do so. Like Underworld Breaches you can get rid of, you can get Ristic Studies, you can get Mystic Remoras. I think it's pretty solid. I'd give it a B.
I would agree with that because it doesn't hit like the most important artifact in almost every deck, which is One Ring. So let's give it a B. Moving on to Seal of Primordium. Now, it is a 2-drop enchantment, and it has the sacrifice clause, destroy target artifact enchantment. The issue is it kind of just sits there and, waits around to do its thing. But I don't think anyone's going to play into it. They're going to remove it first. So I'm going to give it a C.
I'd agree with a C.
Yeah.
Because on its own, it doesn't do a ton that other removal spells already can't do, and theoretically, they could just remove it before they put down what you would use it on anyway.
Correct.
All right, so next we have our 3 drops. Starting off, we have Manglehorn. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact, and artifacts your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Now, the ETB on this to destroy something is honestly pretty good. I'd still only say it's about middle of the road. It's not the best effect in the world, doesn't hit 1 rings. But I really think the better half of this card is the bottom half because you can stop things like Dockside and stuff. However, we are just in a vacuum looking at it as removal. So in that sense, I'd say probably still a B because it's also a body you could potentially block with.
I would agree because it has removal with upside, right? So not only do you get the ETB, you also have the stacks effect attached to it, and it's a 2/2 body for 3 mana. B for old Manglehorn. Next 3-drop on our list is going to be Endurance. Now, while this doesn't remove something on the board, it removes something that could be really relevant during a game, which is the graveyard. Since it only targets one player's graveyard, we wanted to include it in this removal section because, again, Underworld Breach is a thing in cEDH. So being able to stop someone's breach line at instant speed is super relevant. So while it does have Flash, it does have the Evoke Call, so it is card disadvantage. So I'm just going to give it probably a C.
I would argue B only because you could also theoretically use it to protect your own graveyard, depending on what the situation is.
That's true. That's true.
But I'd agree with a C, in all fairness.
Okay, cool. As long as we can agree on it, that's what counts. So moving on to the next one.
So we're going to go ahead and get into our 4 drops. And starting off, we have Force of Vigor. If it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than cast the spell for its mana cost. You can destroy up to 2 artifacts and or enchantments. Now, similar to the other things we mentioned, this is really good. You can hit some of the more prominent draw engines like Ristic Study or Mystic Remora. You can hit value artifacts. You can hit mana rocks to kind of keep somebody out of the game. It is still card disadvantage, though, if you cast it for the free cost. So I'd say probably same as Endurance, a C.
I personally think B, only because you are losing the card disadvantage, but
you're 2 for 2.
You're 2 for 2ing. So like there is a little upside because you don't have to.
I'd agree with that.
You're getting an evoke trigger with that, so you're losing essentially 2 cards for one thing, where this is a 2 for 2.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, last but not least.
CJ loves this card.
This card's funny because you're probably like, whoa, this is played in cEDH. Believe it or not, it is. It is seen in one particular deck, as we all know. The gentleman who likes to play big flips, which is Kinnan. Again, we're looking at these in a vacuum. Can it be played in multiple decks? Things like that. So Thorn Mammoth at 7 mana, 6/6, trample, elephant. Whenever it enters the battle, or whenever Thorn Mammoth or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it fights up to one target creature you don't control. So while it is removable, I'm giving this a D. This is an automatic D. Like, it's not good. You're not going to be Invasion of Ikoring, Green Sun Zenithing this into play, Roccoing this into play. It is awful.
I would argue there's maybe a handful of decks besides Cannon you could run it in, like some of the aggressive creature decks. Rocco, it's probably not the first thing you put in, but like if you've got to play a budget Rocco list, you could put it in over some other stuff.
Bro.
I mean, I agree it's D, but like it's not
10
the end of
mana
the
for
world.
a Mammoth, bro? Like, it feels awful.
So like you just cast it from your hand and then you do Rocco stuff normally, and then you're fighting stuff while you're doing it.
Sure. So potential bouncing board wipes. I don't know.
I agree though, it's probably a D.
I mean, like, maybe Kenrith, because you can reanimate it for 5. But
That's
like, you
not
gotta be
bad
like
either.
heavy.
Or like a Jund reanimator strategy, maybe Sultai.
Maybe.
I don't know. I still think it's pretty rough only because of the mana cost. The upside is great because in CEDH normally you're hitting 2 to 3 things before it dies, if it dies.
Yeah, that's true. I still think it's D. 7 mana. You're, like, that's a Peer into the Abyss. Like, if you're in another color plus green,
who needs that card? Peer's
like,
back. Come on.
I'm gonna stick with.
I'm taking a 6/6 every day. That's almost a Colossal Dreadmaw. Come on.
Nah, it's gotta be D, bro. Like, I'm putting my foot down on this one. I'll let you have one later. All right, we're giving it a D. Let us know in the comments if you agree with the D for Thorn Mammoth. All right, let's move on to another color. Let's go up the ladder, right? Let's start with another color that's getting a lot of love recently from Wizards of the Coast. Let's go white. I like white spells. I think it has some of the best removal for sure. So let's start with the old classic, Path to Exile. 1 drop, exile target creature. Its controller may search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield and tapped and shuffle the library. I think this card becomes an S tier. So in a vacuum, we have to think about CDH decks. I would say the majority of, at least your meta decks for sure, aren't playing a lot of basics.
Yep.
So it's a 1 drop, destroy something.
I agree.
With no upside for your opponent.
Oftentimes they're going to be failing to find on that. It's maybe the 2 and like 3 color decks are going to have a higher chance, and against the monocolor player, you're probably only going to be using it on their commander at a critical time anyway. But I'd agree, it's still absolutely S tier.
Definitely, that's an easy one. Let's go S tier for that.
So up next we have Swords to Plowshare. Similar vein, it's 1 mana, white instant, exile target creature. However, its controller gains life equal to its power. I think this is also S tier. It's even less of a drawback because life matters somewhat less in CEDH than getting basics out. There's maybe 2 to 3 strategies that really abuse their life total, like Ad Nauseam, Peer into the Abyss, Necropotence. There's not a ton of effects that it's really going to feed them if you give them life.
I agree that it's an S tier, but you have to think about decks that are in those colors. Obnixilis, Corvold,
right.
buffing their commander.
There's going to be giant creatures that they're killing.
So, because it is a 1-drop removal spell, and it is exile, which is relevant, hitting Docksize, things like that, the life can definitely be relevant, but I still think it deserves the S tier.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Moving on to this one. Portable Hole. Not seen in too many decks, but it is a CDH card nevertheless. It is an artifact, 1-drop white. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent, and opponent controls the amount of value 2 or less until it leaves the battlefield. So, I don't play this card, but I think at face value, again, in that vacuum, I think it's a C. Because it's limited, it's an artifact, so you're only casting at sorcery speed, and it only hits 2 or less.
I will say there are a lot of very powerful little cards at 2 or less mana in the format, though, but I would agree it's a C because it's a sorcery speed, and you only get that 1 trigger. You don't get any additional upside or anything, but it's not bad by any means.
Correct. I mean, and then again, if it gets removed, then it comes back. So if they remove a Dockside,
then they get Dockside back.
They get Dockside back. Worst case, I guess, scenario there. So yeah, all right. So we're good with C?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
All right, so up next we have March of Otherworldly Light. It's an X and 1 white instant speed spell. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of white cards from your hand, and it costs 2 less to cast for each spell exiled this way. Exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment with mana value X or less. So I think, once again, this is really solid removal. Because it's instant speed, you can play it on critical combo pieces or creatures threatening to kill you at the moment you need to do so. And because it's an X value, you can play it on curve, hopefully every time. There are going to be times where you might not have enough mana for it, but I still think it warrants an S. Maybe an A.
I'm definitely not on board with those. I'm gonna definitely have to give it a B. So hear me out. It's card disadvantage because yeah, you could pay mana into it, but a lot of the times you want to discard cards. 90% of the time to be able to really capitalize on the reduction that it gives from pitching a card. But it only targets one thing. If you think about like other removal spells, which we'll get to a little later, like March, it targets multiple things. So while it is very good because it does exile like cards like the One Ring and other potential good hits, I think you have to sink too much mana into it to hit one thing.
No, we can go with B. It's all right.
All right.
I think it's fair.
You still have to. You could put your foot down on one thing. I'm
not that worried about it. I do think it's good, but I think if you have to pitch cards to it, you're right. It does get worse.
Soul Partisan. Now, this is a 2-drop instant speed exile target non-land permanent for as long as it remains exiled. Its owner may play it. A spell cast by an opponent this way costs 2 more to cast. So, simple removal, not permanent removal. It does cost 2 more, so it does they have to sink more mana into the card. I'm gonna give it a B.
So originally I was gonna say C, but I actually think it is a B because there's gonna be, a lot of times you're gonna be playing this not just generically, you're gonna be playing it on we say this for a lot of cards obviously, but the combo pieces. And if you do this to like a Breach, for example, it's really gonna hurt when they have to set up 2 more for the next turn, or if it's one of the decks that needs their commander like a Kinnan, that 2 extra mana is probably gonna matter because that could potentially be like an activation. Granted,
sure.
So I'd agree with a B. It can be important at those critical moments.
Okay.
But they do eventually get it back. So up next we have Get Lost. It's a 1 and a white instant speed. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. So this card only hits creatures and enchantments. Planeswalkers can be relevant in the format, but not as relevant as the other 2 types. I think the removal spells that hit artifacts, obviously like the green stuff, is slightly better. I don't think this card's bad, but they do also get the upside of the map tokens. To be honest, I think this card is a C.
I would agree to an extent. I think that this card alone is one of the only removal spells that for 2 mana hits a planeswalker.
I guess that's fair. There aren't a lot that hits planeswalkers. So when the ones that do matter come down like a Tevish, it could be very helpful there.
This allows you to stop Sisay lines at instant speed.
Oh, right, because they're using Tyvar and stuff like that.
Correct.
Yep. So that's fair, actually.
I will agree with you that the map tokens are okay, but they almost just feed a dockside at that point.
It could be someone else's dockside,
correct.
Though, theoretically,
the
right?
The only other issue I don't like about this card, it doesn't exile. I feel like as a white
it
card,
just destroys.
You know,
so that they could play it back with an effect.
So you say C. I play this in Tivit, and it's done a lot of work for me.
If you can have more playtime with it, so if you value it higher,
I would value it. I value it at I'm gonna say an A. I want to give it the first A, just because it's 1 white and a generic. But if you want to meet in the middle and say B,
we could say B. Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have a relatively newer card. Came out in Lost Caverns Ixalan. Dauntless Dismantler, a 1 and a white creature artificer. Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. So it's very similar to Manglehorn in that sense. But this one has in my opinion, a better sacrifice ability, or removal ability, if you will. XX white, sacrifice Dismantler, destroy each artifact with mana value X. So the most common use, I would say, is destroying treasures and mana crypts, Mox Diamonds, Mox Opals, Mox Ambers, whatever. All these 0-drop artifacts that really help accelerate the game. And it has a 1/4 body. So again, as removal, I am going to give it an A.
I actually would agree with an A because it's removal with upside, and the upside is very strong because it stops one of the most common combos in the format, similar to Manglehorn stopping like dockside loops. And generically, artifacts are how most decks are ramping, so I'd agree with that.
We forgot one.
Oh, we did miss one.
We missed one on our list.
We have Galadriel's Dismissal. Sorry about that. I know, what a mouthful. It's a 1 mana white instant, and it has Kicker for 2 and a white. Target creature phases out if this spell is kicked. Each creature target player controls phases out instead. Now, I think in a lot of the creature-based decks, like Rocco, or maybe some of the more aggro strategies like your 2 Tymnas, stuff like that, I think this is really good in those type of decks, but we have to look at it as a removal card, not as like a value engine. And I think being able to phase out someone's board is good, but there's probably not going to be a lot of times where that will stop them from necessarily winning the game. It may save your life, but I don't know if it's going to stop combos, because like Docksides could try to go off over top of it. I honestly would value this still at probably a B.
Yeah, I mean, I would even give it like a C. So here, it's 4 mana.
It is 4 mana. That's fair.
Like
That's
4
fair.
mana, it is instant speed, which is relevant.
And for 3, you could just Teferi's Protection.
Correct.
I'd agree with a C.
So with that being said, though, you have to think about if you're casting this, you're most likely going against, again, hypothetically speaking, a stacks board. Like Winota, where you're
you can
removing
get rid of
all
stack
the
pieces.
stacks pieces
Right, that's pretty good.
to go off.
Or like the decks that would play, like I said, like your 2 Tymna list, you could use it against that too, where you've got a bunch of stacks effects. That's pretty good too.
B it is for old Gladriel's dismissal. Moving on, Touch the Spirit Realm. When Touch the Spirit Realm enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature until Touch the Spirit Realm leaves the battlefield. Now this is the best part about this card. It has Channel, which is a really strong mechanic out of the Kamigawa block. Colorless and a white, discard it, exile target artifact or creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So for me, I gotta give this card, I wanna say an A, because while it does only get rid of it until the next end step, it can be also utilized not only as removal, but also as a flicker effect on your own creature. So it has the versatility of flickering a Atraxa or a Tivit, getting the ETB again, but also removing a stack piece that might be holding you up. So I'm gonna give it an A.
I think A is fair. I also really value the ability for 1 more mana to be able to just permanently take something away, because most of the time people aren't gonna wanna use something to get rid of that.
Okay. Got another A. I thought we were gonna have like a couple more A's, but so far we've been pretty tough. We've been given some hard grades.
A lot of them have been kind of like mid so far,
Yeah.
though. All right, so for our next card, we have Lauren of the Third Path. This is a 2 and 1 white creature. It is a Vigilance 2/1, and it says when it enters the battlefield, you can destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, and it also has a tap ability of you and target opponent each draw a card. Now, this is similar to Manglehorn. I think it's good because it's a body that you can remove something on ETB, you can get rid of potential draw engines. It doesn't necessarily hit the best artifact in the format, which once again is One Ring. However, you can have upside where you and potentially somebody else that is behind, if someone's threatening you, you can draw cards together but work with them. Or if you're ahead, you can just feed a card to whoever's in last, hopefully, and they aren't a threat to you.
So I think this has like a double-edged sword. So like 3 mana 2/1 with Vigilance seems really, really mid to me, like C, maybe even D tier. The you and target opponent draw a card, it does have the upside, but I feel like with this ability,
I think it's still, so
it feeds a Bowmaster.
Yeah, I feel like it's a C. So in a similar vein to Manglehorn, while it is good to have a body that removes something, I think the ability is slightly less valuable. The upside is slightly less valuable.
Because I just think like, yeah, if you have a Bowmaster, you can make an opponent draw a card, and then you get a ping, but if someone has a Bowmaster out, your creature's dying.
They can Bowmaster your Lauren off itself.
Yeah, so just feels bad. All right, so let's give it a C. All right, I think that's all our white cards. Let's move on to the next color. What do you think, what color maybe
Let's go with,
goes up in
honestly,
the color
let's
pie?
go right to the top. I think let's do red, the most explosive color.
What? You think red has the best removal? You crazy.
Sorry, I got excited. I got ahead of myself. I think red is the most explosive color in general. I think it's between it or black for the best removal.
Okay, that's fair.
I wouldn't say it's like a hard best though.
All right, so we'll start off with red. I'm a red player at heart, so I'm a little, on this category, I might be a little more bumping up those grades, but we're gonna start with Lightning Axe. 1 drop, instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 5. Lightning Axe deals 5 damage to target creature. So, card disadvantage for 1 mana feels really, really bad. It does deal 5 damage, so it does hit some decent targets. It hits Shieldred, Talion.
You can hit almost
Crom.
every commander in the format.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely solid there, but just the card disadvantage feels so bad.
It does have upside in graveyard decks, but we can't look at it as if it's always going to be in a
Correct.
graveyard deck.
So I think as removal itself, having the card disadvantage, I have to give it a C.
I would agree with a C. Like, it's really strong as an effect, but I feel like more often than not, it's going to be feels bad to discard that card for that 5 damage, and you're going to be wanting to pay 6.
Yeah, it just does not feel good. All right, C it is.
All right, so up next we have a 1 red mana instant. It's Pyroblast. You can choose one. You can counter target spell if it's blue, or you can destroy target permanent if it's blue. Now, unlike Red Elemental Blast, this card is unique because you can actually put it on the stack and it will still you can still cast it. It just will fizzle if they're not blue. So you can still get cast triggers if you need them for anything like that because of the way it's worded. I genuinely think this is very strong. There is a lot of counter spells in the format, so being able to fight it in your non-blue decks is very valuable. I honestly would put this in A, maybe S tier.
I would say A, and here's why. Let's say you go into a pod where there's no blue.
There is the downside.
So
That's
there's
fair.
the downside.
That's fair.
So while
we'll go with A then.
I think A is reasonable. We might as well go with its counterpart, Red Elemental Blast, REB, as it's known to many people. Another 1-drop red instant spell, counter target blue spell, or destroy target blue permanent. So it doesn't have that clause that the Pyroblast has. I still think it can be a dead card, so I don't want to give it S, so I'm going to give it an A because it does have the ability to counter a Ristic or
or even just fight counter spells.
Correct.
And
So-
the decks that aren't going to have blue are going to value that pretty highly.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with that, an A. All right, so up next we have Rending Volley. Rending Volley is a 1 red mana instant spell. It cannot be countered by spells or abilities, and it deals 4 damage to target white or blue creature. Now, this is a good effect. I unfortunately don't think there's that many relevant targets it hits outside of like maybe Chroms. Like, there are still good targets, but it's not going to kill some of the game-winning things like Docksides or Emils. It won't be able to stop a Thoracle, unfortunately. I do think it's still solid. I honestly would probably still go D, though.
Really, D?
I think so.
I think it's a little better than D, and hear me out. It's a 1-drop instant spell. It cannot be countered by spells or abilities. And it hits cards that are, again, while it is specific to white and blue, it does hit a lot of cards or staples. If we're looking at CEDH and like the meta per se, it hits Kinnan, it hits Crom, it hits...
That's fair.
So I don't think it deserves the D because it has the uncounterable aspect to it, and 4 damage for 1 is better with no disadvantage, essentially, besides
That's fair.
blue or white.
I think C is fair then.
Okay, so next up is a red player's bread and butter. It is Lightning Bolt. 1-drop red instant spell, deal 3 damage to any target. So again, super good removal. It hits a lot of the key pieces you don't want to see on a table. Drannith, Bowmaster, other, stacks pieces. It doesn't hit Dismantler though. I'm just saying.
You can also sometimes blow out Null's players if they're greedy.
Correct. So it does have the ability to remove a player, which player removal is the best removal.
And a lot of people aren't going to play around the Lightning Bolt.
Correct. So I think the 1 for 3 damage, instant speed, and I'm a burn player, I think it deserves an S because it does hit a lot of key creatures, I feel like.
I would say A only because there are going to be times where you would wish, for example, that was like a Pyroblast or an REB, so you could stop like a different type of win con.
Sure, okay.
But I still think it's very good. All right, so up next we have Abrade. Everyone knows this spell, hopefully. It's 1 and a red, instant, choose 1. Abrade deals 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. So this is a Lightning Bolt with upside for 1 more mana. Obviously, I think this is still really, really good. There's a lot of high-value artifacts in the format. There's even quite a few creatures that this can still hit, which are semi-relevant in the format. I also agree. I think it just has to be an A. Same thing with Lightning Bolt.
I agree because you're only getting the 1 additional mana to get the modular ability on this. So you get the flexibility, but again, since it does have that extra pip attached to it, I think, yeah, A. Boom, boom, boom. Abrade. Boom. Next up is our 3 drops. So I'm gonna start off with one that usually costs no mana. Thunderclap, 3 mana, instant speed removal spell. You may sacrifice a mountain instead of paying the Thunderclap's mana cost, and it deals 3 damage to target creature. So, again, decent, not great. Again, it's card disadvantage, or else you have to pay that 3 mana. So, definitely a worse conversion rate than Lightning Bolt. I'm gonna give it a maybe a D.
I honestly think I would say B. Just because
Really?
it's basically a lightning bolt. A lot of times I feel like it's not going to be the end of the world if you're sacrificing a mountain. That 1 mana could potentially like save you the game or open you up, like you can use it to remove critical things. Sure. I value it as a lightning bolt, but only slightly worse. I don't think it goes down that heavily.
Okay, B it is.
So we accidentally went past this one, so we're going to go back. At 2 mana, we actually have Shatter Skull Smashing, which is 2 red and an X. It's 2 red pips and an X, I want to clarify. Shatter Skull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, it deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. I think this is pretty solid because even if you're only doing it for 2 or 3 mana, you can usually hit something that matters or 1 to 2 things that matter. And worst case, you can play the back half of it as a land. Granted, we have to look at it as only removal. I honestly think this falls slightly below the last 2. I would say a C.
Yeah, I would say C. It's a lot of mana investment. You have to pay 5 to deal 3, and most of the times you want to remove one thing like a Dranith. So I definitely think C is probably better. Maybe even D but it does have that, like you said, flexibility of being a land, so it necessarily isn't a dead card. So I agree with C.
I think C is fine.
Yeah. All right, going back to the 3s. Jessica Thrice Reborn. She is a legendary planeswalker for 3 mana, 2 colorless and a red. Jessica Thrice Reborn enters the battlefield with a loyalty counter on it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this turn. She does have partners,
This game, not this turn.
Yeah, this game. Sorry, my bad. We're going to focus on that minus X. So I think being able to hit 3 targets is super, super good. I still think it's pretty mid. I don't think it's God tier or anything like that. So let's go. I'm going to go with a...
So I'd agree with a C. All right, so up next we have a 5 mana red spell. It is 3 and 2 red pips. It's Fury. It's a creature and it has double strike. You can evoke it by exiling a red card from your hand. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. Now, I think this is really, really solid because if you evoke it, it's just a lightning bolt for pitching a card, which is pretty good. It's slightly worse than a lightning bolt because it's card disadvantage, similar to Thunderclap. But I do think the upside of being able to play a 3/3 with double strike is pretty strong in this format. That kills a lot of things. I would probably rate this as a B because similar to Thunderclap, it's got some upside.
Some disadvantage.
Some disadvantage.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Moving on to our last red spell on our list, Pyrokinesis. It is a 6 mana instant speed removal spell. You may exile a red card from your hand rather than pay Pyrokinesis mana cost. Pyrokinesis deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures. So again, it is a Fury. Same thing. I would just give it automatically a B. It does have 1 less pip, but at the same time, you're still discarding a card. You're still dealing the 4 damage.
I would say C only because you don't get a body and it costs 1 more mana. But I can agree.
That is true.
To be fair, that doesn't make the effect worse. So actually, I would agree with a B because while it is a little less, it's not worse.
Correct, because like at most of the time you're evoking Fury, like you're discarding the card.
So I actually would agree with a B.
Okay, I'm gonna pick the next color.
Sounds good.
We're gonna go blue. So we're gonna start off with Pugnify. It is a 1-drop blue instant, destroy target creature. It cannot be regenerated. That creature controller creates a 3/3 green 8 creature token into play. So 1-drop, like just being able to destroy a target creature in blue is already to me super strong. It is a 1-drop, it is instant speed, and being able to get rid of a stacks creature or a commander, having to replay that commander, super, super good. I would have to give this probably an S, in my opinion, because you don't see this a lot in blue.
So, having played Urza for 4 years, I agree. Pugnify is one of the best removal spells that you get in the color if you're mono blue, for example. I would say A though, only because it destroys, where there are other things in blue where for 1 to 2 more mana you can exile things,
Sure.
which might be more relevant in the format.
That's reasonable.
I do still think it's very powerful.
Okay.
All right, so up next we have Rapid Hybridization, similar effect. It's 1 blue and an instant, destroy target creature. It cannot be regenerated, however, they make a 3/3 green frog lizard instead. I honestly value this the same. I think it'd be an A. It unfortunately doesn't exile, so it's just slightly below where you really want it to be, but that does not make it bad by any means.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's go give it an A. Moving on to Hydroblast, the counterpart, if you will, the yang to the yin of Pyroblast. This is a 1 blue interrupt or instant. Counter target spell if it is red, or destroy target permanent if it is red. So, very good card, but I do not think it deserves an A, because a lot of the times, like, the only really good red cards you want to hit are Breach and Dockside.
Yep.
And that's really it. So
Maybe some commanders. But
maybe.
Like, yeah.
And even then, the more I think about it, I kind of want to give it a C, because like the targets are very limited.
While I agree, I would say B only because you have the upside of being able to attempt to cast it similar to the other one in case you need triggers for any reason, or you need to feed Mystic, God forbid, if you need someone else's help. Something like that.
Okay.
So I'd say B.
Sure.
So this one is going to be the counterpart to Red Elemental Blast. This is Blue Elemental Blast. It is a 1 blue instant that counters a red spell or destroys a red permanent in play. I think this is still solid as an effect. However, like you said, there aren't a lot of high value red targets. So I think this one, only because you don't have the ability to try to cast it, I think would be C.
Okay. Yeah. Next up, we have Chain of Vapor, a 1-drop blue instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. If that player does, he or she may copy this spell and choose new targets for the copy. I think, personally, this is S tier. While it does have a slight bit of downside if you are targeting someone else's non-land permanent, they could copy it. But a lot of the times, this is versatile in the sense that when you see this card being played, you're usually not... I would say maybe 50-50. You can also, you're storming off with your own Chain of Vapor, sacrificing your lands, bouncing your artifacts, replaying your free mana rocks, and being able to net mana with this. But then also being able to target something on an opponent's board you don't like, they copy it, maybe target something of yours, or target something that's maybe bothering them.
Yeah.
So
I agree, it's good removal with upside. I value this pretty highly. I think it would be an A, but if you're willing to say S, I'd agree with S.
yeah, I just think it has
a lot of combo potential.
Correct. And a lot of the versatility being hitting permanent, not creature, not something specific. And the ability to copy it where you can potentially hit 2 things, like you could bounce a Dockside and then bounce something of someone else's.
And even if you're not abusing it, you could use it for value, hit 1 to 2 things, and then hit something of theirs, and that's still a solid play.
Yeah.
So I think S is fair. So up next, we have Alchemist's Retrieval. This is a 1 blue mana instant, and it has the cleave cost applied to it. It is 1 and a blue. And it says return target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hands, and if you cast it for its cleave cost, you remove the you control from the effect, turning it into return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So for 1 blue, you could bounce something of yours, or for 2 blue and 1, you could bounce something else. I think this is not a bad effect. However, it's a little too expensive compared to some of the other cards on the list that do similar things.
Oh, 100%.
I unfortunately think this is a D, because it's good. I think it's just a little too slow.
3 mana, yeah, I mean, 3 mana to bounce 1 thing. I mean, it just feels really bad. I'm cool with giving it a D. I think we needed some more Ds anyway.
It gets upside in certain decks, but we can't look at it as if it's in its best environment.
Correct, yeah. Next up, we have March of Swirling Mists, an X and a blue spell, instant. As additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of blue cards from your hand. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. Up to X target creatures phase out. This card, again, I'm a Tivit player, very strong in the sense that, you know, in blue you're drawing cards. Most of the time you have a draw engine in play, so you potentially could have a couple cards to pitch this. So worst case you pitch 2, you're exiling 4, you're phasing out 4 things. I think that's super good. The conversion rate on this, very high. The phase out, again, That's a whole turn cycle, so there might be up or downside with that.
I think it's very versatile, though, because you can use it defensive or offensively.
Correct.
And you can wait until you have to use it.
Yes. I don't know if it's S because it has the disadvantage of the card disadvantage.
I'd agree with that.
So I would say A.
I'd agree with A. So following that up, we have Gilded Drake. This is a 1 and a blue creature. It is a flying 3/3, and when it comes into play, exchange control of Gilded Drake for target creature one of your opponent's controls, or sacrifice Gilded Drake. Now, I think this card is really, really solid because you can use it to take away commanders. And even in the decks that aren't built around those commanders, a lot of times you're taking a card advantage engine or you're taking some kind of mana outlet like Kinnan or something like that. It's just almost always going to be a good hit, or they'll have something of value to take like a Bowmaster, things like that.
Yeah, and I think that like the reason we put Gilded Drake in our list is because you're removing it from your opponent's field, and you are gaining that. And most of the time, like you said, it's advantage. It's some piece that is either, if it's based around the commander like Kinnan or Obnixilis, you're taking that away from them, which then shuts them off essentially from their deck.
And if it's just a generic engine, you get to use it.
Correct. So you said, what was your
I actually didn't give it a ranking yet.
Okay.
I was going to go A because while it does give them a body, oftentimes I feel like this card is very backbreaking when we see it played. Like against myself or just others, I feel like it's just always really solid.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had some games where it's like people are cloning this and things are getting tossed around. So I definitely think it could be brutal. So yeah, I think A is reasonable for Gilded Drake. Let's go with everyone's favorite next. Let's go Cyclonic Rift. 2-drop. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Overload for 7. So we have to give it an S. I feel like it is hated on by casual players. It is feared, I would say, by CEDH players, especially those who when our board states are developed. And it has the versatility of being single target or a overloaded board weight.
It is one of, and I think this was a great point that was made to me a long time ago. It's one of very few cards in the game that can undo turns of magic that your opponents have taken. There's not a lot of effects that can physically undo full turns that they may have done, and that is extremely powerful. I'd agree with that.
S tier it is for good old Cyclonic Rift.
I don't know if it's like the best S tier card in the list, but it is definitely up there.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, this one's me, isn't it?
This is you.
Yeah, I did it now.
We're going back and forth if you haven't caught on.
All right, so this one is Resculpt. It is 1 and a blue. It's an instant, and it says exile target artifact or creature. Its controller makes a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. Now, I really like when things say exile in this format because
100%.
It's so much better than destroy. So I absolutely love that on this, and I'm willing to pay that 1 more mana for it most of the time for that effect. Along with what we just said, similar to Gilded Drake, I don't think giving them a body most of the time is the end of the world. Most decks are playing value creatures, so you're going to have random blockers here and there. Or most of the commanders that are like Kroms, Kennys, stuff like that, or like big creatures can just block it. I think this card's pretty solid. I'm going to say S, but I could see an argument for A.
I think in the current meta, if we're thinking about One Ring meta, I think it's very good. 2 mana. If it was 1 mana less and it maybe gave a 2/2 buy like a bird, I think
like
maybe
a swan song
I would give it S. But since it's 2 mana, and
I'm willing to concede
I think A. All right, let's go with Snap next. A 2-drop, colorless and a blue. Instant, return target creature to its owner's hand. Untap 2 lands. Up to 2 lands. So I think this is a really strong card because it is a free spell, essentially, but it has potential upside. If we're looking at cards that produce multiple mana, like Cradle or Ancient Tomb when you're playing this, super good. Not only that, you also are removing something off your board or your opponent's board, so you return your own dockside, return someone's commander to their hand, combo piece, what have you. So because it is essentially free, even though it's 2 mana, I think it deserves an A, and only because it only targets a creature.
I think an A is fair because a lot of times, this similar to Chain of Vapor, this has a lot of combo potential on your own side where you can use it for big explosive turns.
Yeah.
So on top of the ability to remove things for a turn where it may matter, you also do things with it too. So I agree with A.
Let's move on to the worst version of this card. You take it.
We have Snapback next, which is hard to follow Snap after, or it's hard to follow Snap with Snapback, unfortunately. It's 1 and a blue instant. You may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay its mana cost, and then return a creature to its owner's hand. Now, if you're in like 1 to 2 colors, I don't think this is bad to play, but if you're in multiple colors, I think you're just unfortunately playing Snap over this. So because of that, I honestly, combined with the card disadvantage and only being a bounce, would say this is a C.
Yeah, I would agree with you on C. Yeah, for sure. Moving on, I think our next one, I'm actually going to give to you because you've played this card
like this card a lot.
Yeah.
There's actually been a game that I won. I'll say the name first. So the next card is Mists of Lorien. It's 2 and 1 blue, and it's a sorcery, and it says Replicate. Return target non-land permanent and each other non-land permanent with the same mana value as the chosen permanent to their owner's hands. So a lot of times this is just a baby Cyclonic Rift. However, what I really like about this card is I've used it to bounce my own things on top of freeing up the board at the same time.
Okay.
Like for example, you can Wish Claw, go get Mists of Lorien, activate or with your Wish Claw, then bounce the Wish Claw back to your hand, maybe bounce your dockside at the same time, replay your Wish Claw and your dockside, go get something else, and on top of that, you get to free up the rest of the board. It's got some upside. I honestly, most of the time, feels like a baby Cyclonic Rift.
I mean, I think with that, adding on top of it, let's say there's a Dranathan play, you're removing like the Dranathan play that maybe is stopping you from playing your commander. So I think that's really good there. Yeah. I mean, at 3 mana you get 1. At 4 mana you get 2 CMCs. I think that's still decent. I mean, with the format being
because you're not getting as many. Or sorry, you say your point first.
With the format being like 1, 2, and 3 drops, excluding certain commanders, like you can hit a lot, numerous things. Yeah.
I also think because similar to Cyclonic Rift and similar to the point you just make, a lot of times you're going to be hitting so many things at once that it is going to be worth the high mana cost that you're going to have to invest in it usually. I think this is an A.
Yeah, I could see that because we gave Cyclonic.
To be fair, it is a sorcery.
Oh yeah, that is very true. Maybe B.
So I will admit I probably am a little too up on this card. I will actually be fair and probably say B.
I think our last card on the blue list here is Submerge, a 5 mana, 4 colors in a blue instant. If an opponent controls a forest and you control an island, you may play Submerge without paying its mana cost. Put target creature on the top of its owner's library. So personally, this to me is pretty mid. We already said that green is the worst color right now in CEDH. So while I'm sure you'll see green in APOD, I don't think that this is the best, especially in the current meta when there's a lot of other better things. Like I don't think putting it on the top of someone's library is.
It is essentially a time walk though, because that's what they're drawing next turn. But I agree, it's not the strongest effect.
I think we give it a D.
I would agree with that. That's fair.
Yeah. Moving on to
our last color.
We have multicolored still. We'll save multicolored for last.
So really quick, I do want to apologize. We did experience some technical difficulties during the making of this episode. So you are going to notice some drastic changes to the scene. We had to move some things around, change some things out. So I do apologize for that. So here's the rest of the episode.
All right. We are moving on to black, one of the better colors in Magic. So Slaughter Pact is a 0 mana spell. Destroy target non-black creature. At the beginning of your next upkeep, pay 2 colors and a black. If you don't, you lose the game. So right off the bat, I think that this card is gotta be a C because it only has a restriction of being non-black. I think there's a lot of good targets that are black that you would like to destroy in a game of CEDH. And having the clause of pay the 3 on upkeep, if you forget it, you do lose the game. So sometimes we miss triggers. I feel like definitely deserves the C ranking.
I also feel like destroying, as we've covered before, while strong isn't always the best effect. And granted, you don't have always the best removal in black. I would agree with a C as this isn't bad, it's just not the best.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Fatal Push, which is a 1 black mana instant spell that says destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less. And it has a Revolt ability. Destroy that creature if it has converted mana cost 4 or less instead if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn. Now in CEDH there's a ton of ways to trigger this, like treasures, fetches. You can even get in for attacks and potentially get some trades off. I think this card's very solid. I think it's good removal. It hits a lot of cards in the format, a lot of the commanders. It doesn't quite hit everything, though. I would give this probably a B or an A. I'm leaning more towards A.
So I would say B because it only hits creature.
Actually, you know, that's fair. I was already kind of in between, but I think B is fair because only hitting creature is good, but not always the best.
All right. Next up, we have Dam. 2 black pips, sorcery speed, destroy target creature. A creature destroyed this way cannot be regenerated, and it has overload for 2 colorless and double white, and it destroys all creatures. So essentially a Wrath of God. I think this, at face value, being able to be a flex card in the sense you can single target something or wipe the board if need be in a panic mode situation, I think it deserves a A. I'm gonna say A. I hesitated, but I think A.
I think it is very strong. It's probably not the best board wipe you get in the format, but we're not necessarily considering all board wipes. We're looking at this as a removal spell. I think it's a B only because I'm valuing it more as a removal spell with upside than I am as like a full-on board wipe.
Sure. And it is double black, so yeah, I can go with B on that for sure.
Our next one is Long Goodbye. It is 1 and a black, an instant. This spell cannot be countered. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Well, CJ mentioned earlier, it is nice to have things that can kill planeswalkers because that's not available on a lot of the removal in the format. There aren't going to be a lot of planeswalkers that this is going to be hitting, unfortunately, so we're more looking at it for destroying creatures. And it being uncounterable is very good, but it still only hits 1 creature. I think this is probably just another B.
Yeah, I think like the only thing you really want to hit with this is like a Sisay line where you're hitting a Tyvar, a Amanatu, because you can't hit Teferi, which sees a lot more play in a lot of other decks. So yeah, I would definitely go with B. Next up, we have Sheoldred's Edict, a 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a black instant. It has the modular effect with 3 modes to choose from, and you can only choose one of them. They are each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature, each opponent sacrifices a creature token, or each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker. So again, while just like Pick Your Poison, you get to hit, you know, essentially one thing from each player. It's not a guarantee you're gonna get the thing you want. So I think while it is better than Pick Your Poison because it is instant speed and it is 1 mana more, I think your maybe rate is a little higher, so maybe just another B.
I think it's a B too. So next we have Dismember. It is 1 and Phyrexian black, Phyrexian black. It is an instant, and it says target creature gets -5/-5 till end of turn. Now, this hits a lot of creatures in the format. There's actually probably maybe sub 10 that regularly see play that this probably can't kill. Yeah. And most of those are going to be commanders off the top of my head. So you'll probably have other ways or counter spells for them, hopefully. Other ways to deal with them or counter spells for them, hopefully. Sorry about that. But I think this is still really solid because it can kill just about anything. Granted, it is only 1 creature, but I think this is probably an A or an S because a lot of times it's going to be 1 mana and it's going to kill something that's matters.
Yeah, I definitely think just having it be 1, like at face value, it could be 1 generic mana, which feels totally unrestricted by pips. So yeah, I would agree. I think it's A only because it's only -5/-5. It's just not permanent removal. It has to meet that clause in order for it to be good. So I would go with A. Next up, we have Snuff Out, a 3 colorless and a black instant. If you control a swamp, you may pay 4 life rather than paying this spell's mana cost. Destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. So like I said, with Slaughter Pact, you know, having the clause of being non-black is a little restrictive since there are black pipped creatures that you want to destroy, but it has the upside of being able to be cast for free as long as you meet that requirement of controlling a swamp. So I think it is slightly better than Slaughter Pact, so I'm going to say B.
I'm fine with that. I'd agree with you. All right, so up next we have Deadly Rollick. This is a 3 and a black instant. If you control your commander, you may cast it without paying its mana cost, and it exiles target creature. I think this is the best black removal spell in terms of creature removal that you have access to because it not only exiles, but most of the time it is going to be free. And worst case, 4 mana to hard exile something in black is also just a solid rate. I almost want to say S purely because the main decks that are playing this aren't often going to have access to all of the other types of removal.
I think that's fair. I'll go with us on it. All right, next up, the last black card on our list that we chose is Grim Hireling, a creature that costs 3 generic and a black. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens, and then it has the removal effect of 1 black pip, sacrifice X treasures, target creature gets -X until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. So I think that this belongs in C. It is very good, but the restriction of being only sorcery speed feels super, super bad.
And often you'll be trading 3 to 4 mana to kill something important when theoretically you could be tapping that mana to cast something. So while it's necessarily not more expensive, it does feel really bad to have to sack off your treasures to do that.
Yeah. So I would say C.
I would agree with that. Because we're trying to look at it as removal, although the card is obviously a house outside of that.
For sure. We got 2 categories left. Let's move on to one of the smaller ones. We'll save multicolored for last. Let's go to our lands.
We're starting our lands off with Boseiju, Who Endures. This is a legendary land that taps for a green, and it has the channel ability, 1 and a green. Discard Boseiju, Who Endures. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type, not just a basic land, and put it onto the battlefield. This ability costs 1 less for each legendary creature you control. Now, right out of the gate, I think this is S tier because Channel is generically one of the hardest to interact with things in our current cEDH meta. Yeah. There's not a lot of people playing Stifle type effects or like Nimble Obstructionist where you can cycle to like get around it. So I think this card is phenomenal. It hits breaches, it hits artifact combos, it can hit commanders, it can hit combo lands.
It hits Rhystic Study.
It hits
Let's be real. I would agree 100%.
This is S tier.
S for sure, because a lot of the times it's only costing that 1 green pip. We'll move on to another channel land. We're gonna go with Otawara Soaring City. 1 blue, tap, be able to tap for 1 blue, and then you have the channel effect for 3 generic and a blue. Discard Otawara Soaring City, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less for each legendary creature you control. So I think it's definitely very strong. Again, channel is amazing. I hope they bring it back. But I don't think it is S. I think it belongs in A because the cost of it is double the amount of Boseiju.
So I agree that the cost being double is expensive, but I still think that it being almost impossible to interact with still puts it in S tier in my opinion, because there's going to be times where this is what saves you when someone's in the middle of comboing out, because they aren't going to be able to stop that. Like even at 4 mana, it's just, I think it's such a strong and solid effect that it's just going to catch your opponents off guard most of the time.
Yeah, and I think like the more you talk me into it, because it does get around silence effects, abolish,
can play under everything.
Yeah, so yeah, I will go with you on that one for S tier. Last one.
All right, so our last land here is actually going to be Cabal Pit. This is a land that can tap to add a black to your mana pool and it deals 1 damage to you. Or if you have Threshold for 1 black, you can tap and sacrifice Cabal Pit. Sacrifice Cabal Pit, and target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Now, in a similar vein to Channel, because this is an ability, this is very hard for people to interact with. However, generically, the ability is much less powerful compared to the other 2.
Oh, yeah.
So while it is still very, very good, I honestly think this just kind of falls in B because there are some good targets in the format this can remove. There's several good commanders it can get rid of. There's several good value engines it can get rid of, like Tymna or Lotho or Quarks, stuff like that. It doesn't hit everything. So that's why I think B is like a fitting spot for it.
I actually give it maybe less than that because I think having the requirement of Threshold is crucial because
I guess that's
having
fair.
that many cards in your graveyard,
to get to 7 cards.
That's I mean, which isn't super hard in cEDH, but at the same time, it's quite a bit. If you're not a fast deck or a slow, more mid range, it's going to take you a while to possibly get to that threshold.
You're right. We do have to look at it on its own. So actually, I think you talked me into it. I would go either C or maybe even D, to be honest, because we have to consider it by itself.
All right, we'll go D.
All right. So our last category here is going to be the multicolored.
We have Ballista too. I totally forgot about Ballista.
Oh, we did. We can just do Ballista real fast. We're going to do Ballista real quick, and then we'll go into the multicolored. So Or wait, this is your turn, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Ballista just gets an automatic D. And hear me out. You have to pay 4 mana to get 2 counters. And then you get 2 pings.
And if you are playing this card as in your deck, normally it is a combo piece.
Correct.
So if you use it as removal, like things are going wrong.
Really bad.
Or you're behind, like you're in a bad spot. So I agree. As a removal spell, it's rough because not only is it double the going rate of whatever you want to kill, but you also don't want to be using that way.
Correct.
So I'd agree with a D.
Yeah, that was easy.
All right, sorry about that. So now we'll get into the multicolored spells. So then up first, we have Wear and Tear. The Wear side is 1 and a red, instant, destroy target artifact. And then the Tear side is 1 white, instant, destroy target enchantment. Now, this is really good. It's cheap. I think similar to the other effects on this list where it can remove artifacts or enchantments, it unfortunately does not exile, so it's not the best thing, but it does still hit a lot of high value targets on the format, like draw engines, combo pieces. I think this is just a B. Solid middle of the road card.
Yeah, because it does have that versatility, flexibility of being either or both. So yeah, I'm okay with B on this one. Abrupt Decay. Black and green generic pips, instant. This spell cannot be countered. Destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. I think this definitely deserves an A because, for 2 reasons. It cannot be countered, and it hits 3 or less, which is crucial in games. You're hitting a lot of important pieces such as Breach,
Food chains.
And I think that is relevant. The only thing that really stops this is a Mind Break trap or a Deflecting Swat. So
I honestly would agree that I think this is A. The uncounterability is very strong, and unlike some of the other things we've seen where it can only hit permanents 2 or less, I think putting it at 3 just slightly pushes it up because there are some of those extra high value targets you can hit. Like for example, you can hit a Food Chain, you can hit a Ranger Captain of Eos if somebody's threatening that on you. There's a lot of good 3 drops out there. So I would agree with an A. And with us placing Abrupt Decay in the A category, we will unfortunately be sentencing the D category to the Shadow Realm, so to speak. So we'll go ahead and say goodbye to those cards.
they're not good.
Unfortunately, in this scenario, they are not. All right, so up next.
Yes.
Oh, wait, you just did Abrupt Decay.
I just did Abrupt Decay, so you have Assassin's Trophy.
It is me next. So up next, we have Assassin's Trophy. It is a green and a black instant. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So we mentioned earlier with another card with Path specifically, not a lot of decks are going to be running those basics. So sometimes you are going to destroy it and they aren't going to be able to find anything. So there's slight upside there. And a lot of times destroying their best thing for a land is still a solid trade. I think this is an A because it's instant speed and it's just any permanent.
Yeah, I agree. Easy pick. I'm going to take Oko and then he went to Fire Covenant.
Sure.
I'm kind of partial to Planeswalkers. So Oko, Thief of Crowns, 1 generic, green and a blue, Planeswalker. The only part that's relevant about this is why we chose him is that +1 ability. And this to me is huge because it hits One Ring. It hits commanders, which shuts people off their strategies 99% of the time.
And forces them to use something to kill it just to be able to recast it.
Correct. And sometimes this can stick around for 1 or 2 turns, and then you're getting just much more value off of this than just a one-time use. Sometimes.
And worst case, even if you use it and just kill the best thing, oftentimes if they attack Oko, they're not pressuring you. So just gives you some extra time in the game. And usually, like you said, you can talk your opponents into being able to deal with a couple things. Not always, but
yeah.
Where would you rank this? Sorry.
I think being that it's a Planeswalker, you still have to take into account that it's probably going to not last the turn cycle. But I think because it can shut off a commander or a One Ring in the current meta, yes, nearly permanently, I have to give it A.
I would agree with A. All right, so the last card we have here on our tier list is going to be Fire Covenant. And this one is still a good one, don't worry.
Amazing.
It's 1 black and a red, and it's an instant. Fire Covenant deals X damage divided any way you choose among any number of target creatures, where X is equal to the amount of life you pay. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter the loss of life. So essentially, you can turn your life pool or your health pool into just a machine gun, and you can kill the entire board.
Yes.
I think this card is phenomenal. Decks that are playing this, that worry about their life, are probably going to only be like Adnals strategies. And if you're playing this, you might not be on Adnals. So I think the decks that are playing Fire Covenant are going to be like full gung-ho with it. I think this card's amazing. I would probably say A. More times than not, you can wipe the board for less than 20 life.
Oh yeah. I don't think you're using it. You're not paying 20 life into this. I think you're more reasonable is probably sub 10, but still a great card. I know I run it in Sisse because it can hit those multiple opposition agents, things that are really stopping you on your game plan. So I would agree with an A. So I think this is a pretty decent ranking. I have to admit, I think we were pretty much on the same level as far in agreement with cards that we chose and giving them a relatively honest ranking.
There wasn't too many things we disagreed on.
No. So we want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Is there any card we missed on our removal list? And was there any card that you think maybe deserved a rank up or a rank below, or did we totally get wrong? Let us know. We really want to hear your feedback. Let us know if you enjoyed these type of videos. We'd love to make more. So again, thank you guys for watching. We are Wintuition MTG. I'm CJ.
I'm Wyatt.
And we'll see you next time.
Have a good day.